Hi guys, welcome to ST Traveler. Today we are going to be diving into the third part of the Iceland podcast. For those of you that are new to this channel, welcome. Welcome to my little corner of the world. On these little podcasts, I have been talking about everything that you guys might need to know for when you decide to go to Iceland yourself. So in the last podcast, I talked about money and spending. And basically, I talked about what I spent over there, some ways that you might be able to save some money, and kind of what you were looking at in total if you decide to go there for 2 whole weeks. Of course, your experience will be a little bit different than my experience, but I hope that some of this information might help you guys to decide what you guys want to do when you are over there, if you want to do the same thing that I did, or if you guys wanted to change things up and do it a little bit different. In today's podcast, we will be jumping into hiking over in Iceland. Now, I know some of you are outdoorsy people, and if that's the case, then this is the podcast for you. It's just some things that I discovered when I was hiking over there, and so I just want to give you guys some tips that I found out, and I wish that I would have known about them when I was over in Iceland when I decided to go hiking. I did a lot more hiking in Iceland than I did in New Zealand. And I think that's just because there was more opportunity over there for me to hike than there was in New Zealand. In New Zealand, I was more focused on the really touristy things where you get a guide and someone shows you where everything is. In Iceland, it was more like, I'm going to do it my way, so I don't need no guide. And I kind of wish that I did have a guide for some of my trip, but I can't go back. So I'm just going to give you guys the lessons that I learned and the information that I gathered, and hope that it will help some of you guys on your upcoming trips over into this great country. So when it comes to hiking in Iceland, there are a couple of things that I did notice right away. And you can read about it in all of the blogs. A lot of people that have been over there do try to tell newcomers about the elevation in Iceland and what their hiking is really like versus the United States. So if you decide that you wanted to do a certain hiking trail and it says that it's 2 miles, the biggest thing that I was a little frustrated with was if your little plaque that you read before you get on the trail says, oh, it's a 2-mile trail. It doesn't tell you if that's 2 miles one way or if that's 2 miles to get there and then 2 miles to get back. That was kind of frustrating to have because it was one of those things where you're trying to make sure that you have enough time to get to wherever it is that you're trying to go. So if you're trying to plan to do a trail in Iceland and you get to a plaque and you are like, oh, well, it says it's 2 miles, you might want to add some extra time onto doing that actual trail itself, because even if you read everything you can on the internet, unfortunately, you're not going to have all that information there. There are places where your Wi-Fi or your 4G will literally just disappear in an instant. So you can't really rely on technology to give you all that information, and their plaques are just not very straightforward with how far you're actually going to be walking. So that was the biggest and most frustrating thing that I noticed over there. The next thing is elevation. So whenever you get on an Iceland trail, the elevation will quickly gain. And it doesn't seem like it would be that bad when you first get on a trail, but it gets pretty bad pretty fast. So if you're not active or if you're not used to getting up on a trail and then suddenly you're half mile in and it's 1,000 feet in elevation and it's just going to get higher and higher and higher, then you might have a harder time doing these said trails. And even the flattest ones that I did had at least 500 to 1,000 feet of elevation gain. And I did a lot of hiking over there, so I can definitely tell you that the elevation is ridiculous. Just looking at the trails, it doesn't look that bad, but you really wouldn't understand until you get on the trail itself. So I would definitely think about how fit and healthy you are when you're doing certain trails. If it looks like it's going to be a really long hike and it's not all that flat, I would take that into consideration before you get on there. There are plenty of trails in Iceland, so I promise you that there is something for everybody of every caliber of active fitness. But you can definitely tell that the people over in Iceland are very active just based on the fact that when I was there was people that were doing like half marathon style on a trail that was like 13 miles, but it's literally like 5,000 elevation gain. So it's definitely more of a fit country, and you just need to be prepared when you go there. And with that also being said, I would recommend making sure that your hiking boots or shoes are made for this kind of hiking. It's not just like in the forest or through a valley. Your hiking is going to be consisted of gravel and rock and mud, and you're going to be slipping and sliding, and it rains a lot there. So there is definitely a possibility of you having a small slip and slide while you were over there in that country. So make sure that your hiking shoes or boots are ready for that kind of terrain. When I was over there, I didn't realize that my hiking boots had a crack down the middle of both of them. So hiking was still okay for me, but it was uncomfortable and it got messy and dirty really quick because the inside of my shoes would fill up with gravel or mud. So I would definitely make sure to check those shoes before you get on the plane and travel thousands of miles to this country. Time. So I said earlier about their elevation. So if you really decide that you want to do a trail or get on a trail itself, and you're like, oh, well, I probably only need 2 hours to do this trail, add on an extra hour to hour and a half, because your version of a 2-mile hike is way different from their version of a 2-mile hike. They really like to just kind of take their time. They get up super early and they go do their thing, and then they're done by the afternoon. I noticed when I was over there that a lot of the time, like, I would be off by an hour or two, just because of the struggle to get up a certain part of the trail or getting back. It takes a lot on the knees sometimes when you're on those trails because you're going downhill and you're not doing it on level terrain, you're doing it on gravel. And you have to really pay attention when you're going down on gravel, because if you take one wrong step, you're going to be sliding down the side of a mountain, and that's not fun. So definitely take that into consideration. Add more time. Basically, more time to what you think you're going to need. Add at least another hour to 2 hours. The two things that kind of go hand in hand are going to be a flashlight and a raincoat. The flashlight is just in case if you get stuck out in the dark. It does get dark really fast there in Iceland, and you only have so many hours during the day depending on when you go. Think of it kind of like Alaska, but not. So basically, if you think that you might be out there longer than what you anticipated, make sure to have a flashlight on you and a raincoat. The raincoat is just in case if it starts to rain out there. It does rain quite often, quite frequently, and quite heavily. So I would definitely think about bringing a shell with you if you're going to be going in the spring and the summer. And if you're going to be going there in the winter, make sure to bring more of a heavy-duty windbreaker / raincoat just in case if you get stuck out somewhere. And if you need to make sure that you don't freeze to death. Yeah, I would definitely recommend that. So those are just a couple of things that I noticed when it came to hiking in Iceland. It's very different than from what you would normally expect to come across whenever you're hiking. So I hope that some of this will help you guys. Some of these are pretty obvious things, but Like I said before, other things were stuff that you don't really know until you actually get out there and you experience the country itself. So I hope some of this information will help you guys out when it comes to making details for your trip to Iceland. So that's really all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you guys for listening, and I tried to keep this pretty short. And just one last announcement before I go. I would really appreciate it if you guys would check out my website, which is www.sttraveler.org. I have a bunch of art pieces that I am trying to sell at the moment. I'm downsizing my life, basically, and I would really appreciate it if you guys would go and purchase an art piece from me. I will leave a link in the description down below. All of the art pieces are made by me, and they will be shipped out within a couple of days of your purchase. I'm leaving for Colombia in a few days, so all art purchases will go towards the travel expenses that I expect to spend over in Colombia. And of course, when I come back, I will give you guys all the information about that country as well. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you so much for all of your support. Like, comment, subscribe, share, do all of the things that you do with the internet. And that's all I have for today. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening.